There's a lot of ambiguity surrounding how the Tea Party got started, and we're wondering what's your opinion on how the Tea Party rose to its current national position?
Sure, well, and I'd love to give you an opinion, but I can't. I have to give you the actual facts because I was there at the very beginning, so I can speak to it definitively.
Excellent. That's good to hear.
The actual moment of genesis for the Tea Party took place on February 19th of 2009. And there's a gentleman by the name of Rick Santelli, S-A-N-T-E-L-L-I.
Yeah.
And he is a financial reporter on CNBC.
Yeah.
And he was on air. He reports from the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
Yeah.
And he was on air, and he was asked by the anchors in New York what he thought of all the bailout stuff going on.
Yeah.
And in a totally, what we now call the Santelli rant, in a totally spontaneous rant, he said that he thought it was offensive, un-American, that we were rewarding people who had made the wrong decisions. We were rewarding failure and punishing people who had done the right things. And what he meant by that is people were going to get bailed out of bad decisions they had made, mortgage decisions, where they had bought houses they couldn't afford, gotten into mortgages they couldn't afford.
Right.
And the people who were going to bail them out were taxpayers who hadn't made those kinds of decisions, people who had lived within their means and been more conservative fiscally, and he was outraged. And ultimately, during that rant, he called for a new Chicago Tea Party. He said he was going to party on July 4th in Chicago, and he was inviting all American capitalists to come and protest with him. And that really was the genesis.
Right.
Now, what came out of that was that there are a lot of people, you guys know this better than me, being younger than me, a lot of people tied into social networking. And one of the ways people are tied together is with Twitter. And there was a group of people on Twitter who identified together by the hashtag #TCOT, TCOT.
Okay.
And that stands for Top Conservatives on Twitter.
Okay.
And that is simply a ranking engine for people who self-identify as conservatives. And originally it was designed just to rank you by how many followers you had on Twitter.
Right.
So through that hashtag, several people put out a call for a conference call the next night. And the leader of that particular call was a gentleman by the name of Michael Patrick Leahy.
Right.
And that call took place on the 20th, which was a Friday night, and there were 22 people on that call. I was not one of them. My co-founder, Jenny Beth Martin, was one of the 22.
Right.
And two other people who were on the national board of the Tea Party Patriots, our organization, Sally Oljar and Don Wildman, were on that call.
All right.
And on that call, what was decided was that this Tea Party thing was probably a good idea, that Santelli's rant had lit a fire under a lot of people who were saying, yeah, that's what I feel.
Right.
And so these guys decided it wouldn't be good to wait until July. Let's take advantage of the current feeling, and let's call this for a week from today, so February 27th.
Right.
And so they started tweeting about it, and they decided to use another social networking tool, Facebook, to organize these things and promote these things. And that's how I heard about it, was through Facebook and Twitter.
Right.
And for me personally, I decided to hold one of those events on February 27th, 2009 in Sacramento.
I see.
So I got involved probably February 23rd, and we were expecting, all of us who were communicating, maybe 5 to 10 of these things to take place around the United States on the 27th.
Yeah.
It's only a week's notice. And instead, what we ended up with were roughly 48 of these around the country.
Oh, wow.
Over 35,000 people participated on that first protest day.
Wow.
And I was the guy who was leading the protest down in Sacramento.
Excellent.
So that is precisely, factually, how the movement got started.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next question is, what key values unify the Tea Party movement?
Can you repeat that for me?
What key values do you think unify the Tea Party movement?
The three primary values that unify the Tea Party movement, these are our core principles for the Tea Party Patriots, are fiscal responsibility, constitutionally limited government,
right,
and free market.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so how do you plan to carry out this agenda, like balancing the budget?
You know, for at least for us, so I think I need to give you a little bit of the lay of the Tea Party land.
Sure.
Okay.
Because you need to understand how the players lay out so that you can understand the movement.
Okay.
There is only one national organization in the Tea Party movement that exists only to support and provide tools for and networking for Tea Partiers, self-identified Tea Partiers in the nation, and that is the Tea Party Patriots.
Right.
Okay.
And we started back in March of 2009. We now have over 2,100 chapters across the nation and millions of members.
Wow.
You'll hear other names in the Tea Party movement. There is the Tea Party Express, and that is a bus tour that travels around the country. And frankly, from my perspective, not even legitimate at all. Those guys are a Republican political action committee. And if you go do your research, you can research this on Politico at Politico.com.
Okay.
Ken Vogel did an article exposing them. They're opportunists. And what they did when they saw the Tea Party taking off, they said, well, our PAC isn't doing very well, so we ought to change our name to Tea Party Express and drive around the country and collect money that way.
Okay.
So that's what they've been doing. They get a lot of press because they drive around and make a big splash, but they just take money out of the Tea Party movement.
Huh.
Okay.
You've probably also heard of Tea Party Nation, or if you research, you will. Tea Party Nation is the organization that held the Nashville Tea. You guys hear about that?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
Okay, so that is a single individual by the name of Judson Hill. He formed a for-profit entity to make money off the Tea Party movement. He excluded all the local Tea Partiers in Tennessee.
Huh.
And I know this story intimately. I'm actually on my way right now to a red-eye to go to Washington, D.C., and then to go to the Tennessee Tea Party Coalition State Convention.
Oh.
So there's 35 groups in Tennessee representing 18,000 people. He completely cut them out. He cut all legitimate grassroots Tea Partiers out and paid Sarah Palin $100,000 to come speak at a convention.
Oh.
You gotta understand that Tea Party folks are grassroots folks. Most of them don't have a ton of money. And that convention was almost $600 a piece just to attend, not to mention airfare and hotel and all that stuff.
Wow.
So most people in the nation didn't consider it a legitimate grassroots event. It also lifted Sarah Palin up as one of the quote-unquote Tea Party leaders.
Right.
She really has absolutely nothing to do with the Tea Party.
Huh. That's interesting.
And so that's Tea Party Nation. And those are the two, other primaries that you'll hear of other than the Tea Party Patriots.
Interesting.
So now I'll circle back for you, go back to your question, which is, how do we intend to do things like balance the budget, et cetera?
Right.
And the answer to that is, we don't. We don't have a plan for that. It's not what we are.
Right.
We're not here to govern. We're not here to create policy. We're like you guys. I mean, we're just regular citizens. I'm no legislative
Yeah.
expert. I wasn't involved in politics before this. I voted. The only thing I've done in my life to be involved in politics.
Right.
I grew up Republican about 8 years ago, and I'm 48 now. About 8 years ago, I just decided that I'd had it with all the political parties. I didn't feel like any of them represented me. In fact, I feel like who they represent is themselves.
Right.
And so I became a registered independent.
Huh.
Okay.
And so we don't have a plan to govern because we're not a political party. We don't endorse candidates. What we
Right.
do is we look for folks who believe in fiscal responsibility. And in general, what that means is that we shouldn't impose our debt on your generation.
Right.
Okay.
That's inappropriate. One of my favorite quotes, Thomas Jefferson said, we shall consider ourselves unauthorized to pass our debt onto our posterity. And by that I mean that we have an obligation to pay off those debts within our lifetime or within the lifetimes of those currently existing.
Right.
And that's something that we fundamentally believe. I have kids my son is starting high school next year at 14 and a half. My daughter is 10. And I think it's highly inappropriate for a government right now to burden them